Awesome. So just as a quick introduction, again, I'm Brian. I'm the VCU Science Hub program manager. I know that's kind of a new program on campus. Really, the goal of our hub is to try to break down barriers for students to just feel more comfortable around faculty, around resources, and so I'm hopefully with the science coffee chat we can get students to learn a little more about you and your lab and all the stuff that you do on campus.
Yeah, sounds great.
Awesome. So the first question I always like to ask is, what got you interested in research?
It's always such a long question. I'll try to keep it short. I guess for me, I've always had a curiosity about how things work and is it true, quote unquote, I tend to not be the kind of person to be satisfied with what I see in the headlines.
Hmm.
And I would always kind of look a little bit deeper, or, I don't know if you got this back in the day, like sometimes you'll get those email messages that say something like, oh, danger if you do this or that kind of thing. And it ends up being some sort of hoax. And before we had Snopes, we'd have to go and try to figure it out and determine whether or not something was a hoax. So that kind of curiosity of how things work, is it true, is kind of where that comes from for me. And I just got lucky in that I had a couple of really nice early experiences with exposure to research that allowed me to kind of hone that side of my mind and interest. So that was very nice and fortunate for me. But I actually didn't want to go into a career in research at first. I was more like interested in medicine and becoming a physician and whatnot. And when I realized that actually my strengths are better aligned with research, it was an easy transition for me.
Very cool. So what made you start then with, that pre-med journey? Because, a lot of our students are on that journey. What do you remember the moment where you're like, I just think that research is a better fit for me? Like, what do you remember what that moment was like? And I think students would love to hear about that.
Yeah, I remember exactly what it was. One, it was failure. I was going through coursework in a post-bac program and it wasn't going great. And my health was literally suffering as a result of all of the work that I was putting in and all the stress that I was putting on myself related to that. And literally my health was starting to take a nosedive, and I said anything that is going to make me sick cannot possibly be good for me, and I know I have skills elsewhere, so why not try to see if I can nurture that side of myself, or at least explore what it could look like. But it was literally like just things weren't working out in that area of coursework, and I had to have a coming to Jesus talk with myself.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Just so many people I've met where it's like I have to choose between my health in terms of a career versus what I thought initially was like what I needed to do. So that's really interesting to hear. So I'm going to ask you a little bit tougher question. Knowing that the people watching this might not know a ton about different research, could you describe what your big questions are that you're trying to answer?
Oh man. So I have two areas to my research portfolio.
Okay.
I am trained as a genetic epidemiologist. And so, one primary area of my research portfolio is trying to understand the genetic and environmental contributions to substance use behaviors, mostly tobacco use and alcohol use. I may get, brought into projects that are other substances, but those tend to be fewer and further between, and mental health, because they're all kind of coming together. So, really interested in the genetic and environmental contributions to these outcomes. And the other side of my portfolio is then using that information and knowledge and skills to support community engaged research and collaboration with community partners that I work with in the East End of Richmond. And so I've been working with them for several years on things like needs assessment surveys to understand, what are those needs that they're looking for. Mental health and substance use are a high priority.
Yeah.
But then what could that look like? And does genetics have to play a role in that? Could it play a role in terms of, what might happen on a community side? Or do we need to think of different ways to make that work happen and just use the skills that we've developed doing genetics research and support the work that's happening in community spaces?
That's great. Now, you mentioned that you're a genetic epidemiologist, and I know genetics is still such a new field. I mean, we only sequenced the human DNA really 30 some odd years ago at
That's when we
most.
started. Yeah, that's when we started. Yeah.
So what exactly does it mean to be a genetic epidemiologist?
Yeah. So an epidemiologist by themselves is someone who's interested in the transmission of disease.
Okay.
And I think epidemiologists are having like a field day right now in the limelight because of COVID-19. I think everybody thinks they're a junior epidemiologist nowadays. But within epidemiology, there are many subspecialties. So for COVID, we're talking about infectious disease epidemiology,
Mhm.
but we could be talking about things like cardiovascular disease, or diabetes, obesity, and those would be chronic disease. So chronic disease epidemiology, and how certain factors are lending themselves to these outcomes. We also have maternal child health, we
Mhm.
have cancer epi, we have psychiatric epi, we also have molecular epi as well as genetic epi. And so these are all subspecialties under the epidemiology umbrella. And within genetic epidemiology, we really are trying to not only understand what's happening on the side of genetics and their contributions, but then how that functions with environmental factors, like friends, parents, policies, even on these outcomes that we're interested in. And to the extent that we can understand the underlying biology and that genetics plays a role in that, then we could potentially inform what kinds of interventions or prevention programs we might develop going forward.
Fascinating. It's always great to hear all the different subspecialties because whenever I talk with students when I was a career advisor, it's amazing how little sometimes it is apparent how big these industries are, how diverse the research is, the clinical positions are within healthcare. It's great sometimes to just hear that there's all these options of where you could specialize into and go into. Um, but speaking of that, VCU, we don't have a bachelor in public health, right? So a lot of our undergrad students, they don't get access to genetics and epidemiology as potential interests in research. So how do you go about recruiting undergraduates, or how do you like them to develop a relationship with you and communicate with you, since they may not even know what a genetic epidemiologist is?
Yeah, I don't think anybody grows up like as a kid says, I want to be a genetic epidemiologist when I grow up. I didn't even know what one was until I was in grad school, like in my master's program. But I will say that at VCU, we have the health sciences program
Mhm.
and kinesiology. In there, they have several public health related courses.
Mhm.
So one of our former students from epidemiology is actually teaching an epi course in that department. So there are public health related courses on the bachelor's level here at VCU that one can take, and they're generally from that department. Nevertheless, a lot of those pre-med courses are not wasted time. They really do help you understand that biological process that's happening within a person or organisms or what have you. So those are all valuable courses to take, as well as statistics courses. I know some people are very intimidated by statistics, but I'm gonna tell you, I just told somebody recently, I said, I thought I was garbage at math. I did not excel in calculus. I did okay, but I wouldn't call myself a superstar in calculus. And math was always a lot of work for me. But within statistics and biostatistics, for me personally, I found a place for myself because they were problems that used math that really mattered to people. And I guess I really do care about people and their conditions. And so it brought something to life for me that in those other courses I didn't think that were necessarily gelling for me. So
Sure.
that's another area. And then another area of coursework that students can take are things like like not straight up computer programming, but like programming languages that might be related to statistical analyses. So I think there's now a course in R
Mhm.
that students can take, and that would be, really nice for getting some initial training. Even if you end up not going into data analysis, R, a language like R is really helpful because it parlays into all these other languages.
Yeah.
They function very similarly. So that would be another one. So I've totally gotten off track to the actual original question, but I'll say, how do people, so then the piece of like, how do they get to talk to you? How do you get, how do you recruit students? Um, it's a lot of luck, a lot of word of mouth. I hustle a lot. So let me be honest, right, Brian? I'm talking to you today with the hopes that somebody will come and talk to me. They see something here and they get inspired and want to learn more. So yeah, I'm going to be extremely transparent about that. And so yeah, I do a lot of talking in student spaces. I make myself available to fellowship programs like the GREAT program. I think you
Mhm.
met Amy, and so when I can be a faculty mentor to some of those programs, that allows me to get in contact with students. Also, students hear from me about me from faculty that kind of know that I have this interest in mentoring students. So in kinesiology, and that's why I know so much about their program, they have a internship part of their program.
Yep.
And so somehow, oh, I know what it is. They are aware of our Masters in Public Health program.
Mhm.
And so they got in contact with our program director, who then kind of says, hey, it looks like there's an undergraduate student that needs some internship hours. Is any faculty interested in partnering with that student? So that's one way that connections happen, is because um, directors of different programs are talking to each other. But I don't think a student should feel obligated to wait till the director of their program come and talk to me. A
Mhm.
student is always welcome to reach out to me and send an email and say like, hey, I don't even know if I want to work with you, but some of the stuff you do sounds cool. Can we just chat?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, what I'll do, like 99% of the time, I'll say, yeah, let's chat. Let's hear about you, what you want to do. And then let's see if there are projects here that are a good fit, or let me direct you to somebody who I think would be a better fit for your needs. So, yeah, that's how I typically do it. And yeah, I think also I'm very lucky in that I have good partners on the undergraduate side. So the word gets around, that hey, try Liz. She's nice and whatever. So yeah.
Very cool. So then going back to where you went with the first part. So you mentioned, a lot of classes students can take. Do you like students to first have taken some of these classes before they start doing research with you? Do you accept freshmen? Do you want them to have a stats background? What's your preference?
For me, it's not necessary to have any of those courses in their background. What I'm most particularly interested in when I'm talking to students is like, do you have a deep passion? Are you willing to work your buns off? So, if you don't know, but you're willing to figure it out, I will make it happen. We have a good sized team where we're very supportive of each other. And we have senior students, like PhD level students, who are willing to work with undergrads and give them some of the basics. And also, I have developed some tutorials for my research team where a student has nothing, will get led step by step on some of the basics first, and then we kind of get them loose on another set of projects that they're more interested in or more directly relevant to our work. So no, you don't have to have any strong background of statistics or data analysis or programming background. Of course it helps because it'll help you move faster,
Mhm.
but it would not mean that you can't get an opportunity with us.
Very cool. So speaking of that, then what do you see as the role of an undergraduate student in your research lab?
I treat all of my team members pretty much equally, from the high school student, because I do mentor high school students, all the way to a postdoc. So somebody after a PhD level, and basically I'm like, you will do, your own data analysis. You'll work on a project of your own. We'll work on it together. You're going to, you know, guided by some of the things that I'm saying and what your team members are saying, you'll come up with a research project. But also because we are working in a team and our team is crazy all over the place. Because I mean, if I've got two portfolios, you can imagine
Yeah.
we've got a lot of projects. And so we will try to identify a team project that we all work on and contribute to over
Mm.
a semester or an academic year. And it is my hope that the student also contribute to that project and anything else they feel so compelled to contribute to with respect to the rest of the team. So I see everybody as being an equal member of the team, but it means that everybody works their buns off.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't have necessarily like a hierarchy. I know in some places it's like, okay, the postdocs, since they've got the most training, they're going to do the most difficult stuff. And yes, they're still going to do the most difficult stuff because they have the most training. They are most qualified to do that. But if an undergrad wants to learn that, they can sit at the side of the postdoc and they will be expected um, to to put in the effort and work to
Mm.
learn. So yeah, I know other times like in other teams they say like, well, undergrads will be relegated to certain tasks like data collection or data entry or lit reviews or something like this, and those are very important tasks and are foundational for all the research that we do. Yes, sometimes we do that, but it would not be exclusive to the undergraduate experience. It's really important to me that our undergraduates, all of our students on our team, have an ability to work no matter where they go after this. So, yeah.
So then with that then being said, like what are the skills that a student could expect to develop in your lab? And kind of what you mentioned, like how do they apply both in research and if they decide to go in a career outside of research?
Yeah, so I will say, first of all, I have students in academia, like have gone on and they're doing things in academia, but actually the majority of my students, because epidemiology and public health can be so broad, I
Yeah.
have students in government, in private industry, and yeah, I mean, all over the place. And so, I am definitely training my students to be good wherever they land, and I encourage them to think broadly about what wherever they land could look like. Having said that, the strengths of our lab are around data analysis, data management, and public health topics. We're not just focused on substance use exclusively. We think about things like substance use and their relationship, like I said, with mental health, with
Mhm.
chronic diseases, so like obesity or cardiovascular disease.
Mhm.
So, with that in mind, really, we're trying to provide a foundation around data analysis and skill in that space,
Mhm.
um, and getting comfortable with, what it could look like, and then translating that out into settings that are not research focused. And that's the nice thing about doing the community engaged work. So, I'll give you an example. I have a team. Well, I got super lucky during COVID. Nobody, I mean, the rest of the world was not lucky during COVID, but I got lucky because once we had the shutdown, there were a whole lot of students that had nowhere to go, and were like in the case of the med students, they literally could not go to clinical rotations,
Yeah.
and so they would approach me with like, "Hey, can I help you?" And so we started this whole needs assessments, COVID-19 needs assessment survey that we're doing now still. And while we were analyzing the preliminary results with our community partners,
Mhm.
we saw that there was a real strong need for education around COVID and specific aspects of COVID, treatment, prevention, transmission of disease. So the team then went back and generated a series of educational flyers and blog posts around the knowledge that we had generated from the survey, as well as what they were learning from the research papers and the CDC and whatnot, and aggregating that into something very small, concise, easy to get to. And and then, giving a little bit more information using the blog post. They did all of that. I mean, I would kind of, poke a little bit, like that could be a stronger word. That was all them. And so they were also learning how to communicate ideas
Yeah.
that are generated in research into lay community spaces, which I think is huge. And it is more important to me that we do research to help people and to spot and to inspire action in community spaces if at all possible. And so we think that this kind of work can be helpful, and those would be the skills that people would need to make that happen. The other thing that we are developing in terms of skills, and I think it's more of a soft skill, but is very much appreciated, um, is learning to work in multidisciplinary teams.
Mhm.
And for us, of course, we are a very multidisciplinary group. We've got public health epi, we've got genetics, we've got bioinformatics people in our team. And then you mix that in with our community partners who are coming from social work, education, nonprofits all the way through, like nonprofit leaders. And so you can't talk high level in that space. It's a turnoff to them. And they're like, you obviously are not dumb. Tell us what we need to know so we can make good decisions. And so we learn to also work with the speak of the different disciplines and the different perspectives. So like, what when I say this, I mean the following. And I'm hearing this from you. Am I getting that right? And just, practicing those skills and watching others do that can be really powerful for students, I think, that they can take into their other spaces, because we're only going to get more interdisciplinary going forward.
Yeah, it's great to hear that, because that's something that I definitely saw during my doctorate program, was seeing like just how disciplinary even just the grant funding agencies want you to be. Like they don't want just one lab to put in an R1 grant. They want to see that there's multiple labs working together from different fields to analyze it in whole new ways. Um, so the last question I have for you is, how would you like your students to perceive you? What do you view as your role in the lab?
I think because of my sports background, it's most comfortable for me to view myself as a coach. Um, it 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 feels most comfortable. So I tend to push when I think there's some pushing. I tend to check in when I think, like, I see the panic look on the face. um, but also trying to give a good picture of, like, this is our goal. Not unlike a coach, like we're trying to, win a game or whatever.
Mhm.
This is our goal. This is our end strategy, and and here are the steps that we'd like to take. I get that we're going to deviate from the plan. Every plan gets a deviation. But let's start with some good foundational pieces. And then also in coaching, especially in sports, you do some foundational things like drills and, base runs if you're a runner or whatnot. So you have to have a good, strong base. And I think a coach, is responsible for developing that base. If that base is in place, you can riff on that base and do this thing or that thing, or and then kind of push yourself to new heights after that. So I do see myself as more of a coach, and I guess I try not to be scary, but I've been told that I can be scary. So yeah, I guess just because I'm passionate, like, hey, we're gonna do this thing, and so I think that can be a little overwhelming for students sometimes, but it's not my intent. Yeah, so sometimes I have to tone it down a little bit.
Great. Thank you for joining me today for the Science of Coffee chat.
Sure thing.